Welcome back to EU4. Last time we left off, the Commonwealth had just declared war on me. There was a minor problem. Commonwealth spies had infiltrated the library at Stockholm and deleted all logs from the war. Here you can see Swedish historians trying to access the texts on the war. Fortunately, the Commonwealth could not delete the war from the minds of the soldiers. Luckily, word of mouth and Scandenberg lets us reconstruct the war. If you do not wish to watch the reconstruction, you can skip ahead using the timestamps and look at this simplistic reconstruction of how the war went.
Come kill me.
The disorganised Swedish forces in Germany spent the first 3 years of the war regrouping and recruiting another 60,000 men to the army. Meanwhile, the Commonwealth forces moved through the forts in the borderlands, finally taking Viborg in 1651. During this stage of the war, there were a few engagements, the only ones being between Westphalia and the Commonwealth, yet these were only minor skirmishes along the German border. Shortly after Viborg fell, the Swedish army arrived and defeated the Commonwealth force, enabling Sweden to retake Viborg. The Commonwealth troops retreated towards Novgorod, where a second battle occurred with another Swedish victory, in which the Commonwealth took heavy casualties. In 1654, the Swedes laid siege to Pskov. Pskov looked like it was about to fall, but the arrival of the Commonwealth army on the fringes of the Swedish siege works would threaten the outcome of the siege. The colossal relief army outnumbered the Swedes by almost 100,000 men. The battle began the next day, with the famed wing hussars attacking the Swedish flanks, but due to the Swedish fieldworks they could not penetrate the lines. After 3 assaults, the Swedish cavalry soon drove them from the field. The Commonwealth infantry soon followed suit after a disciplined advance of the Swedish foot engaged them. This part of the battle was particularly bloody, with a huge Swedish cannonade causing many casualties. Likewise, the Commonwealth guns were particularly accurate, inflicting many casualties among the Swedes also. The victory was a costly one. The Swedes had lost over 65,000 men. A similar proportion of the Commonwealth army fell, with 95,000 men dead. The garrison at Pskov soon surrendered, after which a rapid advance of the Swedish army defeated the remnants of the Commonwealth army at Pollock, allowing Sweden to occupy large swathes of land over the next couple of years. The Commonwealth army had consistently faced losses, but whilst the Swedes were occupying the Commonwealth, their navies successfully broke the Swedish blockade by defeating the larger Swedish navy in detail. This was not the first time that Sweden would lose all of its trade fleets, and it wouldn't be the last. The quick-thinking admiral from Poland soon led a small force of men on his ships and into the Swedish homeland. Meeting no opposition, his force managed to ravage the lands around Stockholm for many months, causing much devastation. But luckily, the Stockholm militia was mustered and managed to drive back the invaders. Soon after, a new Swedish fleet was constructed. It defeated the Commonwealth navy and restored the Swedish blockade. With much of the Commonwealth occupied, the war-weary Poles regrouped for one last battle, to prevent the Swedes marching on Warsaw. The large Swedish vanguard managed to rout a large Commonwealth foraging party of 32,000 men, limiting their numbers for the upcoming battle. Hearing the sounds of cannon and muskets, the main Commonwealth force marched to the field, but they were too late. The Commonwealth army was only a shadow of its former self, standing at 132,000 men, the same size as the Swedish army. The superior quality of the Swedish troops was winning them the day, but the Commonwealth forces clung on, hoping that the commander of the rearguard would soon reinforce them and help turn the tide. However, this commander was a discontented member of the Schlachter. He just watched as the Commonwealth army was shattered. That day the Swedish forces slew 60,000 Commonwealth troops, losing only 12,000, and the treacherous commander of the Commonwealth rearguard was soon set upon by the Swedish army, and died along with 30,000 of his men. With Warsaw threatened, the Commonwealth sued for peace, ceding lands in Bohemia as well as the Baltic coast. The Commonwealth also promised not to get involved if Sweden attacked Austria. Following the war with the Commonwealth, I invaded large swathes of Germany and also Austria. Not too much happened post-war, other than a minor trade dispute with Britain.
Rag, let me know when you're making 140 ducats in trade, okay?
Well,
Make it 140.
140, that's rookie numbers, aren't they?
change
Yeah,
one
that's
your
pretty
Protestantism.
Ironhawk, you've just...
Oh, yeah.
Right, I'm embargoing you if you're going to keep putting
Boost
ships in
ability if you
Lubeck.
can, and lower your war exhaustion.
Alright, on it.
There's a whole... I just saw an English fleet go...
Why would you out
Right.
yourself like that?
I'm privateering the English channel.
Also, well, I'm pretty sure you can upgrade your
It
advisors.
won't work.
Yeah, probably can.
You can ask me politely.
Fuck,
I
Remove
just
them.
clicked on the
I have quite a few light ships.
I don't know how to move ships. How do I replace the switch?
What did you just say?
Talking about nits.
Married you
Yeah?
so much
Yes.
in Belgium.
Do you fancy moving your ships out of
Actually,
Lubeck
can you
yet?
make Battlefront?
yeah, I don't know.
What? Or in?
There you go,
Oh,
I've moved these out.
apparently-
As well as me realising I'd been a fool and forgot to take Bornholm of Brandenburg, which Texas had consequently taken. Now, as Texas was allied to Poland and was giving him like 200 ducats a month in subsidies, this was quite worrying as it meant he now had a province on my doorstep. To rectify this, I waited until Britain and Spain were at war with France again, and declared war on Texas and occupied the island. I'm actually declaring war on Texas now. Reason, Bornholm.
Oh, he has
Funny,
Police
isn't it?
Navy.
But he's at war with Britain right now.
Fucking Puyi looking ass. What do you
Oh, I
mean
bet
you
you
want to
Mexico's
accept?
going to siege down Vinland. Hopefully he doesn't realise I have it. Now, as Texas wouldn't peace out the war for the three-dev island of Bornholm, I decided more drastic measures would need to be taken. Now, I couldn't go over to Texas because its navy was far greater, so what I decided to do was slowly funnel my troops through the Netherlands over my ships, heading to the front lines of the French war and proceeding to stack wipe all the Texan troops there. He soon peaced out after that. This did allow Spain and Britain to turn the war around, but then more Texan troops landed and they lost. Now the Commonwealth. Well, the Commonwealth I had wanted a war for a long time, but he seemed to be suspiciously AFK. The Swedes found this very suspicious, but because they were very, very honourable people, they decided to wait for the Commonwealth to come back from being AFK. However, Commonwealth was instead using the huge amounts of martial aid from Texas to build shit tons of manpower buildings and manufactories and all that sort of stuff. This allowed him to start closing the manpower and income gap which I previously had held an advantage in. Finally, when he came back, he decided to ally Italy. This threw the Swedish plans into chaos, and after trying many different things, the Swedes decided that an alliance with Britain and Spain would be the only way to overcome the new alliance between Commonwealth and Italy. This did have the effect of massively upscaling the war, and seeing which way the wind was blowing, the Commonwealth allied France. The populace of Sweden around this time were deeply saddened by the Westphalian rivaling of Sweden, an unprovoked act of purest treachery, one even greater than that of the Commonwealth.
So how are we gonna keep Thingy's navy out? Because he's gonna join somehow. They're gonna
No,
wiggle it.
he can't. He literally can't join.
Yeah, let's stop dithering and start
He won't be able to
doing.
join because of the alliance. And if he does, we just bring in Aurion because that'll literally be a cancel.
I'm taking the next tech. No.
Are we ready? I have the stack.
We'll end the year end, by the way.
Oh my god.
We're ending a year.
Yeah, at the end of the year.
Oh, I've been waiting to fight a war all bloody session. And at 10 to 10 on a Monday night, shortly before session close, the war was declared. The Swedish army scored a quick victory against the Commonwealth one who was still disorganised.
Masteries.
It doesn't say that we hold it on my screen.
Oh no, I forgot to reinforce my army when I went in.
Epic. He's death stacking, by the way. Like, reinforce it. Jesus Christ, please.
Does it say that we hold it on your screen? It doesn't for me.
Yes, we hold it, don't we? We hold.
I just took the tech mid-battle and it just boosted my morale up so much.
Wait, that's a good point, Rob. Oh, I thought we
Yeah, you
Like
have
that.
it because you went religious like this, didn't you? And I don't. Come on,
Correction.
Nautic. Win that, yeah.
I think that's him.
He tried to do it on the 2nd of January, but failed.
The Spanish used their special mercenaries to quickly siege down the border fort. Now, we did manage to recover some footage from this siege.
Ready?
Oh no, that uses my men as an assault.
Fine, we've got it, look, we've got it.
Why is it letting you stack wipe me there?
No.
What?
It's
is
retreated
supposed to-
there.
No, I didn't click.
Yeah, but sometimes the all retreats are a
That's
bit
gonna
weird.
really hurt me. That's really cancer. Why is that a thing?
As the forces in the west were too strong for Spain and Britain to defeat alone, they planned to make a limited incursion into France using Britain's tech advantage. Whilst the forces in the west were distracted, the Swedes would march through the Commonwealth to Crimea, where the Commonwealth had relocated its capital to. The Commonwealth had heavily fortified the Russian border with Sweden. However, the defences in the west were rather lax, and the Swedish forces began to move into the Commonwealth. I also note that the Commonwealth had just discovered that you could in fact dev manpower. However, in doing so, he'd also forgotten about tech, and the Commonwealth was 2 military techs behind, which would greatly hinder his ability to fight.
If you're a man of honor, you'll stop the attack.
Yeah, Rag, slap a maneuver general on that bad
I
boy.
have-
Give you the beat out
I have, but it's only a 2 maneuver general.
Yeah, Rag, I slapped my 4 maneuver
Well,
general on that bad
Rag,
boy.
try recruit
If you're a man of honor, you will let them leave.
a higher maneuver then.
Honor in war, kill him.
Because it was really
Rag,
cursed
if
and
you
I
were a
didn't-
man of honour, you wouldn't have naval invaded with 2k in the last war and kept killing my
That's
trade
not
ships,
true.
yet you did.
Citation.
Yes.
Hypnotic, I'm not me when I'm
You
hungry.
can just send.
I know, do you remember the plan?
No.
Oh my god. The plan of attacking them while we have the advantage of
User
tech.
joined your channel. User left your channel.
Oh yeah, that. Alright,
That
do you mean to go for it now?
I mean, if you'd be so kind, yeah, because you have the tech advantage, you know. That's
Alright.
kind of why I was thinking, let's go for it. Instead
Alright,
of,
well, Bordeaux.
Let's just wait until. Or I mean, I guess we could just wait until they get tech
User
27,
Yeah,
then we go.
Runcop's
for
getting
it.
his takeaway, so it's good.
Following the battle, the Swedish army sieged down Krakow before occupying lots of western Poland and Silesia, which had a gold mine. All was quiet on the western front, but the Swedish army soon moved to Polotsk. The Commonwealth army was stationed in various camps around the city to help with supply. The main Swedish army attacked the exposed men at Polotsk, whilst the secondary army waited back in order to intercept any reinforcements. The tech was giving the Swedes a huge advantage in the battle at Polotsk, whilst the interception in Warsaw prevented 200,000 men from joining the other battle. The battle in the streets of Warsaw was incredibly costly for the Polish soldiers, who could not manoeuvre in the narrow streets with their large numbers. The Poles were shot from windows and from fortified strongpoints, whilst many bayonet charges drove them back through the streets. The delaying action allowed reinforcements to pour into Polotsk and Warsaw. The fresh Swedish troops appearing on the outskirts of Warsaw forced the battle-weary Poles to retreat, and hearing news of their reinforcements breaking, the Commonwealth army in Polotsk soon retreated. In total, the Swedes lost 127,000 men, most of which in Polotsk. The Commonwealth lost 110,000 men in Polotsk and 85,000 in the streets of Warsaw. On the western front, the British and the Spanish had defeated a French army at Le Bourd. However, whilst the Swedes were achieving victory in the east, the British had been driven back at Bordeaux. The unusually quick attack by the French caught the British without their artillery train, and the Brits deliberated with their allies on what to do.
I don't know how reinforcements work, but I'm pretty sure that
I'd
even
cut
if I
your
reinforce
losses.
it.
I'd cut your losses and
Yeah,
retreat
yeah,
from that
and
one
retreat.
and have
Yeah.
like a cannon stack ready to go on the board if they capitalise on it.
Yeah, I've got
rather
to
than take unnecessary casualties.
No, I agree. Let's cut our losses, Rob. We've lost that fight. Okay.
Alright, fair enough.
You can,
Okay,
it'd be better to take another
okay,
battle.
in which case, wait until then I'm actually reorganise all my stacks.
As France's colony of Willand continued the tradition of making the most dangerous place in Europe to stand the decks of a Swedish lightship.
Right.
Will's colonies bloody killing my trade ships.
My trade ships get sniped in every war. The Swedish advance continued into the heart of the Commonwealth. When the Swedish army was bogged down sieging, the Commonwealth decided to strike north and try to siege some of the Swedish forts in Russia. However, some mercenaries leapt at the opportunity to be suicided into these stacks, and they ended up making the Commonwealth advance too costly, and they turned back. During the war, Westphalia, France and Italy had launched several minor incursions into the Swedish lands in Germany. The barbarians pillaged many a village and they even sieged a few forts. In order to squash the raiders, various mercenary stacks and some Swedish cannons were sent over. This diminished the size of the main Swedish army, which was doing its southern thrust towards the Commonwealth capital in Crimea. Whilst the raiding force was driven off, the main Swedish army went on the offensive, routing a small Commonwealth army at Breclaw. The then overconfident Swedes, with their diminished numbers, decided to seize momentum and march on the Commonwealth army which had mustered nearby. But the Commonwealth had scorched the ground and made the advance very slow. The artillery train got bogged down and was lagging behind the main army, and once it did reach the field, it could not find a position and did not actively participate in the battle. The Swedish men were in high spirits and held the line for some time, but reinforcements could not get into the battle in time due to the Commonwealth scorched earth policy. The defeated Swedish commander then retreated from the battle in order to regroup.
He's going to be running low, but
Yeah, that's
the
the
thing
thing.
is,
He's got to be running low. I refuse to believe that he's
No,
still-
he'll be at 0 manpower probably. But the thing is that it doesn't matter because you can just make that.
Okay, I lost a battle to Poland, but that's because I didn't get cannons in the front row. Back row even.
Whilst the Swedish army was regrouping, some western barbarians were once more squashed before Sweden launched their own raid into Westphalia. It was intended to relieve some pressure off the Pyrenees front, and the large response by over 200,000 men certainly
Alright, let's
warranted
go, Rob.
that.
I'm bringing 20. Where's
Their whole army's here.
Right, coming.
How long could I can 21st of October? Did I lose cannons? Yes, I did. Does it matter? Not really. Right, go.
Yeah, I'm bringing my cannon.
Once regrouped, the Swedish army once again went for another southern thrust towards the Commonwealth capital. The Swedish army met them once more at Podol. Scorched earth once again made reinforcement timings incredibly precarious, and the general staff of the Allied forces were on the edge of their seats.
You beat him on morale and like there's no tomorrow, George. You got this. He's gonna.
I mean, the fact that Commonwealth is only on Tech 24 means you shouldn't be losing.
Come on,
Although
get in.
you're-
Get
George.
You're really leaving these reinforcements late. Force march them.
They are all force marching. I'm chucking everyone in.
Sakes, man.
Don't
What are
overstack
you
it, George. That will
doing?
lose you the battle. We just lost the battle because of that.
Please, don't do this to me. Texas, yeah. There you go. These Texas is out.
That was a late one.
Not it. I don't like to criticise, you know. But you're really leaving these late.
Come on, that's gonna get in. Yes! Chad!
But you don't.
Yes. Now, George, you have no idea how close that was. You had all your
not-
artillery in the
not-
front
not
row.
sick.
Following the battle, the Swedish forces marched on the capital. Despite the exposed flanks of the army, a large stack of mercenaries, as well as the Swedish Second Army, dissuaded any Commonwealth assaults during the siege. Soon, the capital fell. Sweden only needed to siege a little more land down for the Commonwealth to be forced to peace. Now, the Commonwealth could have been fully occupied and the Swedes could have got marginal land concessions. However, due to the situation on the Western Front, the Allied War Council decided to force the Commonwealth into a white peace in order to focus down France and his allies. The Commonwealth couldn't be forced out the war quite yet, so the Swedish commander decided to embark on an attack across the Volga
to shatter the remnants of the Commonwealth army and force them to peace the war.
Committing!
Oh, I just got a couple of stack wipes. Yep, I think that might have just screwed Rag.
Reinforcing at the start. Ironhawk, not me, by the way.
Remember to split those 90Ks up.
Oh
Oh yeah, you
Another
smashed
stack wipe, boys.
The Italian Navy is sinking to the bottom. But apparently I'm in this battle by my flagships get sunk. What the fuck?
it. That's wrong.
Okay. I have to rebuild my flagship for a third time.
Second stack wipe.
Right.
Third stack wipe.
Good. This is what I'm liking to do.
Oh no, that wasn't a third stack wipe. That was just a battle one. Oh no, that was a third stack wipe.
Are you actually stack wiping you? Or you're
I know this is me stack wiping him thrice.
Thrice.
Okay, he's
Because
at
he
minus-
did the
he's
old
at,
send
he's
him
at
in.
-1 stability. Ironhawk, ye of little faith in my navy. There you go, he's done.
The Commonwealth had been knocked out of the war, but the situation on the Western Front wasn't great. France and its allies had closed the tech gap, and while Spain and Britain had won various naval engagements, the same could not be said for the land army, whose initial advance was thwarted at the First and Second Battle of Perigord, followed by 2 more defeats at the Second and Third Battles of Labor. The war was far from over. Rejoin me next time to see if the Swedish invasion of Westphalia can turn the tides in the war.